All right, everybody, what is up? Today, I am talking about, today I'm talking about SI rehab and a flare up at the beginning of it. Okay, why it happens and how I manage it. Okay, so flare ups during SI rehab happen, they're part of the game. Okay, so when you have these jagged edges here, hold on 1 second. Okay, there we go. So when you have these jagged edges right here, okay, like that, when you start moving them over and back from the upslip and or outflare, I published a paper called Root Cause of SI Joint Dysfunction, where I propose that SI joint dysfunction is caused by an upslip and or outflare. And that paper has statistically made medical history and readership according to AI, getting up to like 26 times the annual readership 3 to 5 years post publication. Okay, so what happens is, let's say you're realigning an upslip, see these jagged edges, right? And it comes over, it can cause a flare up over it, okay, biomechanically, okay, because you're getting shearing back pain, right? The other biomechanical reason I've found in my clinic is that ab and adduction is part of my protocol, okay? So when you have SI joint dysfunction, like let's say you're like this, you're outflared and upslipped like this, right? So you got these jagged edges, right? And then the person does ab and adduction, okay? So they're taking their femur and they're going like this, laying on their side. Well, what are you doing? That, right? And that can cause a neuroprotective state or a spasm, okay? Excuse me. So when that happens, then the person goes into a spasm, okay? And they quit, say, this doesn't work, you hurt me, blah, blah, blah. But it's part of the game. You got to warn them up front. I'm telling you. I have a whole speech. Send it to them on YouTube just to make sure that we're on the same page about how this rehab works. Okay. If you don't do that, I'm telling you, patients just quit on me all the time. They have a little bit of a flare up and they'd be like, oh, this isn't going to work, And I'm like, oh, no, so I kind of got hip to what was happening and that this was like a psychology thing. And then the other reasons are beyond your control, generally. So back spasms come from, I find stress happen to me personally in my life. Okay. Comes from increase in stress. There's a certain point that your back goes into a neuroprotective state. And if you check these people like I have over the years, I believe you'll find they have an upslip on one side, bilateral outflares, and their tailbone's twisted. That's an acute back spasm. That's when they can't stand up for 3 days and can't walk for 1 to 3 weeks. Okay. Most of them go to the emergency room because it's so painful. I've had it. Trust me. I'm a physical therapist and I had to miss work. So that's something that you have to be proficient at talking patients through. I call it the off the ledge speech. I teach it in my clinical and business mentorship. Okay, listen. So other reasons is people doing like long car rides. We'll get it. When someone tells me they're going on a long car ride, I'm like, oh no, they're coming back all flared up, right? When people get on airplanes, the bags, and then they go sleep in another bed, all the walking, okay, during SI rehab, I'm like, oh crap. I'm in Florida, so if someone tells me they're going to Disney World, I'm like, oh, because they walk miles, right? And and that causes SI to flare. Okay, I find in my patients, right? So and then stressful events. I broke up with my boyfriend. I got a new job. I've had patients that were doing awesome, right? Like a quick one, 5 weeks, right? You've had it for years, 5 weeks, and they're doing great. And then all of a sudden, they're coming all flared up. And I'm like, what happened? They're like, I don't know what happened, And I'm like, did anything happen in your life, like stressful? And they're like, well, I started a new job. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, well, so you can't mitigate stress, but you can warn them about it so it doesn't become this catastrophic, you know, event in their life that they quit from. If they quit, they go back into the medical system. And judging from what I see in here, it's not pretty. Okay. With most of my patients coming in telling me I failed everything. Okay. But so the most important thing when it comes to a back spasm is to not push through it. If you, I've tried everything. If you try to push through an acute back spasm where the person like can't stand up, first of all, you check if they have Caudy-Queney syndrome, weakness, bowel bladder issues, central anesthesia. Make sure there was no trauma involved. Send them to an MD ASAP. You know, that kind of thing. But other than that, I'm like, it's a back spasm. I'm like, so the way you handle it determines if the patient stays or the patient quits and goes back into this, you know, what they got before, which is usually not pretty, okay, in the chronic pain world. So what I do is I tell them, you have to let this calm down. Stop your exercises. You're in a neuroprotective state. And stop your exercises, stop everything. And I'll see you when, it's very important, when you are not 99% back to baseline, when you are 100% back to baseline slowly without the weights, start doing it once a day and creep up back to 2 to 3 times a day with weights, okay? If they were doing weights, okay? And so anyways, so that's what I do. That's how I manage back spasms. They're a part of this game, and if you don't warn them ahead of time, they think you hurt them. Okay, but you did, you know? I got 2 patients right now, another trap people fall into. 2 patients right now that were doing great. Like, man, I haven't felt this good in 20 years, you know? Had chronic. Guess what they did? They started doing more. 2 of them were gardening. They went out and they started mowing their lawn and gardening. And guess what happened? Like that and like that, right? Neuroprotective state, back spasm. They can't stand up. My instructions, stop everything. I told you not to do that. Stop everything and let this thing calm down. Okay? It's part of the game. And if you don't learn how to manage it, flare ups, then you're in trouble. Okay. And they're in trouble too. So, anyways, that's it with back spasms. Back spasms can be catastrophic. If they happen at the beginning of the rehab, I'll never forget this one woman that she was a nurse. She couldn't stand up in the OR anymore. And she had a back spasm right at the beginning of the therapy. Those people usually quit because they're like, I went to this guy and then boom, I had a back spasm, right? So he did it, right? And I was like, don't quit. This is just what I warned you about in the beginning. You know, I couldn't believe she didn't quit. She let it calm down. We moved on. She got better. She has no pain when I discharged her. After years of craziness, you know, in the medical system, you know, going to this specialist, that specialist, this intervention, that intervention, PT, chiropractic, whatever. And, you know, we stabilized it. But I was really, really, really impressed with her that she did not quit on me, okay? Because when it happens at the beginning, it's catastrophic. I actually tell patients this, okay? When I have a back spasm, I say, generally the clinical part in here is not hard for me. The hardest thing I do is when someone has a back spasm is to talk them off the ledge because they start catastrophizing. This isn't going to work, blah, 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 right? And when that happens, then it's the hardest thing I do. It takes me 30 minutes of reassuring the patient, you know? So it's the hardest thing I do, not the clinical part. The hardest thing I do is to talk someone, I call it my off the ledge speech. I tell them that too. I'm like, I call this the off the ledge speech that I'm doing with you right now. I find if you're just blatantly blunt with them, they're like, okay, well, this guy doesn't seem clinically worried. It's not something serious, right? We just went over Caudy-Quine syndrome or something, or trauma, fractures or something like that, right? So it's not that. Then you check them, they have an acute upslip, flares and a sacral rotation for decades in here. Okay, so you gotta let those calm down. If they push through it, they're gonna make it worse. Okay, don't start back until they are 100% back to baseline, not 99%. That is a key distinction. And the reason why, I had a guy, he was a soldier who was about to medically retire because of his back pain, flew to Colombia and spent 30,000 US dollars on stem cell injections into his SI joint, which makes clinically no sense, but to me, but I mean, people get desperate, right? It's a mechanical issue. Your SI joint's out of alignment. Like, so how's stem cell going to help that? So, anyways, he had a back spasm because he thought someone died in his family. So he had a panic attack and his back went into a spasm, right? But he was doing great before. No limp anymore, was able to run, and then he had a back spasm. I told him, do not start these exercises back when you are 99%. When you are sure you're 100% back to baseline, start once a day, no weights, and start creeping back up again, right? He said to me, he comes in all flared up. He says to me, I had you in my head, man. I thought, operative word, thought I was good. Not, I'm good. Ambiguity, right? And when he said, I thought I was good, that is when the whole thing flared right back up again. He was back into a spasm, and I'm like, bye-bye. See you in 2 to 3 weeks, But he knew, because I told him he wasn't going to quit on me, because I told him what to expect. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, it's important that you learn to manage these things because they're just a part of like most people's SI rehab. Most people don't just get better. They have like healing is a non-linear process, people don't just like, that's happened once to me. And the 25 years of experimental trials and stuff like this woman was in, right? She got better one visit and it stabilized. And I was like, I told her, don't ever tell anybody that happened here. And she said, why? Don't you want people to know, that like how amazing this treatment is? I said, no, I don't want anybody knowing that happened here. And she said, I said, because that's not reality. I said, when that happens, then people expect that. Okay. And in business, I own a 7-figure, 20-hour week cash-based business. If you comment hybrid below, I'll teach you it. But in business, if you don't manage expectations, like you're in trouble. Like these people, when something happens that is not what they believe should have happened, then they are not happy with you. Okay. So I learned to just manage expectations. Okay. It's part of what I teach in my business course and clinical, but mostly business. Anyways, if you want to take my clinical mentorship hybrid, comment clinical below. If you want to learn more, I'll DM you more information. If you want to learn about my 7-figure, 20-hour week cash-based practice, that I developed based on my methods, becoming a super specialist in chronic pain. Everybody is in like a knife fight for with their competition around them for this person, this patient, this patient, this patient. Like these patients are shopping. Patients that come to the clinics that I teach people how to open and run are done shopping. They have failed everything type stories they'll tell you, So they're not shopping anymore. They're looking for a super specialist in their condition. That's what kind of like Lyme disease, if you think about it, right? I mean, there's a medical doctor here in Clearwater that writes on his website, 94% success rate in Lyme disease. I've heard of him. I know that people come from all over the world to see him, right? He's a super specialist, right? Patients have gone to their infectious disease doctor and have the story, right? Like they just shrugged me off or didn't know what to do or gave me antibiotics or whatever. But this guy has dove into the world of Lyme and figured out a 94% successful protocol. I don't do Lyme, but I teach people how to become a super specialist in these chronic pain conditions that have fallen through the cracks. We do not do, everybody teaches you sales techniques, free discovery calls, free discovery visits, talk people out of using their insurance. I don't do any of that. Workshops. I don't do any of that. I tell my patients, I tell my students, my business students, I tell them, stop talking people out of using their insurance. Stop talking people out of using their insurance. Stop the workshops. Stay home and play video games with your kids. Stop. When person calls and they ask, do you take my insurance? Tell them yes. How much does it cost? Hundreds of dollars. And the reason why is because it's true. They just told you what they value in life, and now you're going to talk them out of it. People are all marketing to the same patient population. When you figure out how to market and become a super specialist with clinical methods to prove it, no sales techniques, I relieve their pain and demonstrate to them that I know what I'm doing. They don't have to think I know what I'm doing because of the way that I'm using words and manipulating their brain. No. I relieve their pain. They're sitting there out of pain, and they say, I haven't been out of pain in, years, decades, this guy. And then he showed me why I fell through the cracks. I'm in, And for the people that can't afford it, I refer to one of my students down the road. That's what I teach my business students to do. Everybody wins. Okay, 7-figure, 20-hour week, cash-based practice. Comment hybrid below. I will teach you. Well, first of all, I have to see if you qualify. You do $1,500 a month to market, be a PT, DC. Don't go into debt. You can make that at a home health chiropractic or a home health PT or the joint chiropractic, and I'll teach you the rest. Okay. Other than that, peace. Love you all.